A holiday tradition of mine is the lighting of a red candle at midnight on Christmas Eve. It is for two persons who are no longer with me, and who had a major impact on my life. Ethel Pearl Kennedy was my grandmother on my mother's side of the family. She came to the United States in the early 1900s as a very young child from the Netherlands. She lived in an Amish community in central Pennsylvania. When she turned 18, she went to work as a housekeeper. In 1919, a flu epidemic killed thousands across the United States. One of the victims was the wife of William A. Kennedy, a young immigrant from Ireland who came to this country in the late 1890s and fought in the Spanish-American War as a medic in Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders. He then went to work for Bethlehem Steel, later USS Steel, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He had two sons by his first wife. When she died from the epidemic, he hired my future grandmother as a housekeeper to help take care of his sons. A year passed, they fell in love and soon married. They had two daughters, one being my mother. In 1929, the stock market crashed. Thousands of people lost their jobs, homes, and savings. My grandfather was laid off, but his company had an insurance company look after its employees. The insurance agent would bring food, mostly dry goods, beans, rice, flour to make bread, and milk for the children, and a chicken every once in a while. In the apartment building one floor above lived a family with 8 children. The apartment had only 2 bathrooms, 1 bath. They had no food, and the father had taken ill. My grandmother took it upon herself to evenly divide the food they got from the insurance agent and gave the other half to their upstairs neighbor. This went on for 3 months until the insurance company agent found out, and then he would always bring extra so the family upstairs could eat. Compassion, generosity, and the love of others was whom my grandmother was composed of. She passed away on Christmas morning in 1982 at age 87. The other person I have a candle lit for is my father, George Whitworth. He was born to a couple who were half Cherokee Indian and Dutch. He was the youngest of 7 children. His parents were killed by a drunk driver during a hayride when he was 14 years of age. He dropped out of school and worked in the field planting and harvesting crops until one day he could not take it anymore and ran away from home. He was 17 and he enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Corps. He was assigned at first as an aircraft mechanic, and then he was selected to work on a new invention for aviation called radar. He rose to the rank of corporal and was soon transferred to the Hawaiian Islands in the Pacific. A war had started in Europe, and trouble was starting to brew in Asia. On December 7, 1941, he was at his post watching the radar screen at the Army Air Base called Hickam Field, just across the bay from the Pearl Harbor Naval Base. He told the sergeant on duty of some blips on the radar screen. The sergeant said that it was probably the B-17s they expected in from California, or just some false echoes that early in the morning. Less than an hour later, they were under attack from Japan. My dad manned a foxhole with a machine gun along with others to try and shoot down the enemy aircraft. They stayed at their post for 3 days until relieved. He was then assigned to man radar stations in the Himalayan mountains of India for the rest of the war, helping to guide troops and supplies for the British and Chinese troops fighting the Japanese in Burma. The day Japan officially surrendered, my dad was there along with other service personnel who survived Pearl Harbor. He was part of the occupation force of Japan until 1948, when the USSR imposed a blockade between East and West Germany, cutting off vital supplies to the Germans in West Berlin. The U.S. and its allies flew in much-needed supplies to fight off starvation for the German citizens of Berlin. My dad was among those who helped guide the planes over hostile territory. He saw the faces of German children who were sad, weary of the bombed-out buildings, hungry, longing for peace. My dad and others gave the children Hershey bars and cookies, plus toys, and the children devoured the goodies. As the airlift of Berlin continued, the American, then British military personnel will start to drop handkerchiefs to the ground in a form of parachutes as the planes came in for landings. The handkerchiefs contained Hershey bars, fruit, and cookies. My dad was among those who made the hanky parachutes, as they called them, and dropped them for the German children. They soon earned the nickname the Chocolate Soldiers. After the blockade came to an end, my father was transferred to Yucca Flats, Nevada. He was there for the testing of a new weapon that ended World War II, the atomic bomb. His mission was to measure radiation levels in the clouds and around the area. A couple of years later, he met my future mom and married her. Afterwards, they had a son. 1 year later, he was transferred to the Alaskan Territory as a tech sergeant in charge of a radar post. I was born 2 years later. 1 year after my birth, my father had taken ill and was transferred to the Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, where the medical facilities were better. He died on the morning of Christmas, 1956, the complications of lung cancer. These two persons impacted my life by giving me life and by instilling in me compassion and caring for others, plus to help out others when they need it, without a thought for reward or recognition. The candle is lit for them. Merry Christmas, Grandmother. Merry Christmas, Dad. I love you.